Hello everyone. In this video we're going to be taking a look at online discussions. We're going to be taking a look at them through the lens of a Clint Eastwood-esque squinty-eyed glare. So let's get started at our look at the good, the bad, and the ugly of online discussions. One of the reasons that online discussions are so popular is that there's a number of different good things that come along with them. First and foremost, they can lead to greater cognitive and exploratory learning. Secondly, they can lead to increased conversation and collaboration. And thirdly, they can also help students develop critical thinking skills. So let's take a look at each one of these points in a little bit more depth. So the first good thing about online discussions is that they can create greater cognitive and exploratory learning experiences for students. The use of discussion boards is an active method of learning. This is in contrast to traditional lecture style that is much more passive. And as many research studies have shown, active learning is more powerful than passive learning at getting students to learn, to retain, and to apply course content to practical situations. Another great aspect of online discussions is that it can lead to increased student-to-student conversation, collaboration, which will lead to greater student empowerment. One of the things about online discussions is that it has more participation and less anxiety than face-to-face discussions. The social aspects of the face-to-face classroom are very intimidating for a lot of students, especially ESL students, new students, or those of us who are just simply shy or quiet. Discussion boards online can bring those shy students out of their shells. One important skill that we're always trying to instill in students as educators is critical thinking skills. And online discussion boards can create more developed critical thinking skills. Discussion boards in their nature are very reflective, and this forces students to read other people's perspectives and carefully consider why they are responding the way they are. We've looked at some good aspects of online discussion. Now let's look at some of the reasons that online discussions might not work. So let's look at the bad. In particular, lack of excitement, lack of people participating, and lack of quality. One thing that can hinder a lot of discussions is a lack of excitement on behalf of the students. You hear comments like, I hate doing discussions for online classes. We're always doing discussions. I wish I didn't have to do them. It's not even hard. It's just annoying more than anything else. So oftentimes students are not really motivated to post anything besides not getting a mark for something. So that is something to consider. How do you create excitement in an online discussion? Another thing to consider that could be a possible problem is lack of people participating, as this tumbleweed represents. Another problem, everybody posting late, so there's nobody to respond to. You need to give clear guidelines to students about when they need to make a posting so that other people can have time to respond to it. Some students might just not participate, and they might want to take that hit of 5% or 10% or whatever it is. You can't really stop that, but there is strategies out there that you can look at for trying to make sure that students are participating in online discussions. And another consistent problem with online discussions is the lack of quality sometimes that you get from certain students and the amount of effort they're putting into their posts. You need to be very clear to students that it's very important for them to post thoughtful messages that moves the conversation forward in some way or another. Just posting, yeah, I agree, is not an acceptable posting, and it will not earn students any points, or it shouldn't. You need to explain to students that their post should show that they've read the material, and that they've also read the responses of other students, and that they're engaged in a conversation with everybody. One suggestion for me would be to put a minimum word count. At least you can ensure that people know that the expectation is that they need to post something that has quite a bit of thought into it. So we've looked at the good, we've looked at the bad. Now let's move on to the plain ugly. We're going to look at conflict in discussion boards, personal attacks and bullying, and possible instances of plagiarism. So one thing you've got to be prepared for if you're going to run online discussions is that not every student posts something that has thought into it, and not even every student is going to post something that's polite. With such a diversity of students and with the perceived anonymity of the online environment, conflicts of ideas, beliefs, insights, and suggestions can always arise. And if you leave them unchecked, it can throw a discussion off track. It can negatively impact any given student's experience of the course. So you need to moderate discussions closely, and you need to ensure that you explain to students that they need to follow a certain etiquette guidelines and treat others with respect online. Another form of conflict, but one that ratchets it up a notch, is personal attacks and bullying. So this can be an escalation of an existing conflict and the result of any given student's beliefs, whether they're religious or philosophical, or it could just be that they have a bullying personality trait. So again, just like any conflict left alone, these students can discourage other students' participation. They can contribute to other students dropping the course. It just creates an overall bad vibe in the discussion. So you really need to address this as a group first and foremost. And then if you find that somebody is bullying other students or is doing personal attacks, then you need to confront that person individually. And finally, on the ugly side, plagiarism. We've all seen examples of it. It rears its ugly head all the time, especially in online environments because it's so easy to just copy and paste. So plagiarism, if left unchecked, guilty students will continue to do it with more arrogance towards getting a good grade for a minimal amount of work. If other students see that other students are plagiarizing, that might lead them to start taking shortcuts. So if people are aware of plagiarism, or if as a teacher you're aware of it, you need to stomp it out right away. And the good thing about discussions is as you continue to see more and more posts from the same students, you can start to see their voice as a writer, and it can indicate whether there is plagiarism taking place. Be sure to tell students that even though this is discussion board posting may be a little bit more informal than an essay or something like that, they still need to cite their material when they're paraphrasing, summarizing, or using direct quotes. So with all this good, bad, and ugly going on with online discussions, I thought I'd provide just a little area to talk about best practices and some of the things that I've experienced in my time as an online teacher. One thing that I like to do is to post examples of good posts. So to take a look after you've marked the first discussion board and find a few students who've done really just a top-notch job in their discussion, and then in an announcement just post their names first, ask if they're alright if you share their name with the class, and then post that to the class and have the other students go and take a look at their other students work and see what your expectations are for a high A or for a really good example of a discussion board. If you're going to be doing that on a continual basis, it's good to switch up the students that you're using as examples. Another thing that I would suggest for discussion boards is encouraging debate. Create a choice activity where students can choose a side. This works because it gets students to see opposing viewpoints, to find evidence to back up their own ideals. It just really creates a more dynamic discussion board, and hopefully you'll never just see the words "I agree" or those kind of ones that don't have any thoughts. Another thing that discussion boards are really helpful for is question and answer forums. So you could use forums as a way for students to ask questions about a class. This can be a great place to have a frequently asked questions area for the class. And if a student asks you a question offline or in an email, ask them to post it in the Q&A form. And then you can start building up this database of common questions that students have based on the content or based on the delivery or whatever it is. And then finally, practice active intervention. Right? Begin with a general posting in the discussion board thread that talks about etiquette, that talks about your expectations, if it's a minimum word, if it's spelling and grammar that you care a lot about. If you don't care about that, you just want people to discuss things open and freely. That's what you need to do. You need to be on top of discussion boards. You need to, when they're posted, you need to keep track of the students who are marking them, and just really be on top of it in order to promote a positive experience for all students involved in the class. And finally, just before I wrap this video up, I want to talk about some of the logistics behind doing discussions in Blackboard, in the current edition of Blackboard. A lot of teachers come and say that they want to do group discussions because they want smaller groups to discuss things so that students get to know each other a little bit better, and so that it doesn't seem so unwieldy that you have 40 or 50 students participating in the same discussion. It's a really good idea. One of the problems with creating group discussions, though, in this edition of Blackboard, you can see here, discussion board, there's no area for points possible like there is for blogs or for journals or for wikis. You cannot assign points possible for a group discussion board. This can be very frustrating. This means a lot of extra work on the teacher's part. It doesn't show up in your needs grading section. You need to go into each group individually and click on every student's individual posting. If they have a reply to, you got to go searching for the reply, so it can be very frustrating despite some of the good things about having smaller groups. As you can see here, For large class discussions that involve the whole class, you can actually apply a grade to it, and this will show up in needs grading after somebody has posted. It makes it a little bit easier for posting, but again, you have the unwieldiness of having 40 or 50 people all engaged in this discussion, and is that something that you want everybody answering the same question, etc., etc. Either Amy and I can discuss with anybody, or you can discuss with anybody on the CTEL team about which one might best suit your purposes. Anyways, I hope this has given you a good insight into classroom, into discussion boards in an online classroom. Again, I encourage you to speak with your CTEL team to see if it's something that'll work for your online course.